Hello, Kiss Army. I'm Pasquale Veri.
And I am Claudio Spera. Welcome to Let Me Know a Short Kiss. So, welcome to part two of our talk with our dear friend Joey Cassata. So, on this episode, we talk about the unique performance of the music from the Elder album at the Kiss Cancer Goodbye event. So, stay tuned for a special announcement at the end of the episode. Once again, we're so happy to be joined by the one and only Joey Cassata. Thank you, my friend, for being here.
Again, boys, thank you again so much for having me. Last episode was so much fun talking creatures. Now we are in to the Odyssey, baby.
Nice. Let's go on this journey. So let's start with this. Tell us a little bit about the talents of Todd, Zach, Jeremy, Tyson, Hal, and of course, you. How did it all come together with this performance? We talked about the last episode. Everything was online, very little rehearsal. Don't tell me it was the case with this as well.
Believe it or not, we had one extra run through with the Elder than we had with creatures. We knew the Elder was a bigger undertaking, not physically, not demanding, but there's just a lot of moving parts in the Elder. And again, I had never thought of playing these songs ever. The only song I had ever played off the Elder was I played that the year before. We did an unplugged version, super fun. But diving into the Elder, this was a whole nother animal. Now, Creatures is that just balls to the wall rock album. The Elder is very theatrical. Now, I have a theater background. I was on Broadway for 5 years. It really helped me diving in to these songs, especially things like Odyssey, Just a Boy, Only You. These things had such a theatrical feel and arrangement to them that it took a lot to figure out what the hell was going on in these records. So again, it all started the same way. Now, what was the date of Kiss Cancer Goodbye? Like the first week in December?
I don't remember. I think so.
I think so. Yeah. I think it was the 5th and the 6th. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you gotta remember. So Neil I talked to Neil about this stuff during the summer. We didn't know the Elder. We didn't know Creatures. We just talked about the event and what could we do and blah, blah, blah. And just brainstorming stuff. So by the time I think October got around, now the band is in place. We know we're doing the Elder, which is in itself insane. Todd kind of brought it up the year before as a joke. Hey, Neil, hey, why don't we do the Elder next year? And so we laughed about it. Well, Neil called his bluff, like he says on stage during the performance. And when we put this together, we knew it had to be a certain group of guys, or we could not pull this off.
Yeah.
A couple of things. Obviously, everyone's got to be a great musician, but more than that, you got to be dedicated to pulling this off like only a Kiss fan could appreciate, which is almost flawless. And the other thing I think that's so important is you got to actually like this record. And I know that's crazy to say, but I don't think you can play this record the way that we pulled it off if each of us didn't, in our own way, love this record. Because there's so much going on, all the little nuances, whether it's the track order, whether it's the dynamics in Odyssey, whether it's the whispers in the breakdown of Mr. Blackwell, or whatever you're talking about. There's so much going on in this record. Unless you know it from when you're a kid and you grew up with this record like it's your life, I don't think you could recreate it the way we did it. And we all knew that going in. So we were on it, again, same way as Creatures. We get on a text thread. Hey, guys, what the hell are we thinking? That's our first thread. Like, are we really going to attempt this? And we just start, and I forget who. I think Zach might have been the first one that said something on the thread. He's like, hey, guys, I don't know if I'm crazy or not. And this was like the first or second week in October. He's like, I already started diving in and learning these songs. And I was embarrassed that I had already started too, because I'm like, I need 2 or 3 months to make sure this is right. I can't learn this in a week. And then we all started chiming in, laughing. Holy shit, I just dove in. Jeremy's like, yeah, I just started figuring out the beginning of Under the Rose. And Todd's like, yeah, I just started memorizing the lyrics for Just a Boy. And, we all jumped on it around the same time because we knew what an undertaking it was going to be.
Right.
And The Elder, isn't exactly an album most drummers get to play in full from beginning to end. This was definitely a first. And I would suspect, I'm not a musician, but that playing The Elder would be a lot more complex musically to play than maybe Creatures. Am I correct?
Again, it's different. It's so different than Creatures. And a couple reasons. I don't particularly love the mix on The Elder. I think
Mhm.
the drums are a little buried. So for me, picking out some of the drum parts on The Elder was actually more difficult
Yeah, must have been
than
tough.
picking some,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
than picking out some of the drum. Even though some of the drum tracks are harder on Creatures, the physical drumming of it,
Yeah.
like I was mentioning, Satan Sinner and Danger.
At least you can hear it. You can hear it. It's
Right.
there. Right.
If I can hear a drum part, pretty much I'll be able to learn it eventually. Whether it takes me a day or a year, I'll be able to learn it. With The Elder, the hardest part was actually dissecting it
Yeah.
and picking out what the hell is he doing here? I
Yeah.
can't tell
Yeah.
what the pattern is for. I mean, something like, I remember the first time that we thought about this when I'm like, oh, I got to dive into The Elder. What songs do I know already? Blah, blah, blah. And things like Just a Boy and Odyssey were not songs that I ever really put on in the
Yeah.
Kiss catalog. I love The Elder as a whole. I used to listen to it all the time. And I love The Oath, and I love Under the Rose, and Only You, and I, and Mr. Blackwell. But things like Just a Boy, I wasn't putting on Just a Boy. If it came on, I left it on. Or if I put the whole record on, I listened to it. But even Just a Boy, like in my brain before I started dissecting it, I'm like, yeah, what the hell do the drums do in Just
Yeah.
a Boy?
Exactly. Yeah.
I
Right.
couldn't even think of if I
It
could.
is true.
Better yet, I couldn't even think if there were drums in
Yeah.
Just a Boy.
Yeah.
So when I started looking at it, even the beginning pattern is so weird and off of what a normal rock drummer would play. It took me a little while to master that. So, the drumming on The Elder is way more intricate.
Yeah.
It's obviously Eric's first recording with Kiss, which is it's crazy to think that this is his first album. But the arrangements on The Elder are so sophisticated. Bob Ezrin, who I'm sure was behind 90% of it, the arrangements, the bars, the entrances, like a song like Only You, Eric is entering his fills on different beats on each bar. He'll
Yeah.
enter on a 2, then he'll enter on a 3, and then he'll enter on an and of 1, and so many weird spots that I wanted to make sure that were perfect. It took a long time to figure out.
And actually, let me just touch a little bit on what you mentioned about Creatures, about the mix from Michael James Jackson. On the cymbals and stuff, which is not the case for The Elder. So no, you could barely hear, the cymbals. Those high pitches or rides or hi hats. It's like they're not there. It must have been tough, man, for you to come up with that.
Listen, even things like The Oath, I mean, as bombastic as The
Yeah,
Oath is,
yeah,
the double bass is buried.
yeah.
It's
It's true.
buried in that damn song. It's the best part of that song.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's so driving, you barely hear it. Barely hear it. And like you said, especially the cymbal work.
yeah.
If you listen to Mr. Blackwell, Eric is doing so much stuff on the hi-hat that I can't tell you how many times I had to freaking rewind it to hear what the hell he was doing. So much, because not only because it's so intricate, but because it's buried in the mix. Ezrin, as much as I think he's great and Destroyer sounds so great, The Elder, I hate to say it, does not
Yeah.
sonically sound good.
So you mentioned a few songs in the Creatures episode that you had to really work at to nail down. What would you say are the songs on the Elder that you felt that you really had to work hard to nail down?
Again, I think I have 3 off the top of my brain. I mean, obviously, the easy answers are The Oath and Escape from the Island, right?
Mhm.
Those are the big drum songs on the record. But believe it or not, because they're big drum songs, because they're more Creatures oriented,
Right.
they were easier for me. They didn't give me problems physically, I had to make sure that I had the right feel, I had the right stamina, the right power, the right finesse, the dynamics. But intricacy wise, things like Mr. Blackwell,
Hmm.
Only You, and Odyssey were probably my three hardest. And it's weird, like, I think all of us as a group even said, Only You and Under the Rose, that kind of like that back to those two back to back were the hardest two to master.
Oh yeah. Oh wow. Wow.
Wow.
And Under the Rose, especially because it's in six, and the guitar feel and the drums are syncopated. There's no pulse, there's no meter to it.
Yeah.
So it's all these little accenty type, patterns around this meter, and then all of a sudden it comes in with this big, bombastic, laid back, power chorus. It was very hard to and again, if you listen back to the recording, meaning our recording, our live versions, we played. We didn't want to do a typical concert where we're talking between every song and hey, how are you guys tonight? We're here with the Elder. We wanted to create an atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, number one, we did the original track listing of what Kiss wanted, right? Leading off with Fanfare, Just a Boy, Odyssey, Only You, Under the Rose, telling the story the way Kiss intended it to do. So that was a debate at first. We didn't know what we were going to do because we were like, oh my God, people are going to be sleeping if we open up with Fanfare, Just a Boy, and Odyssey. People are going to be like, what the hell am I watching? But we said, you know what? If we're going to do this, let's do it the right. We didn't want to open with the Oath the way the original pressing opened. The way,
Right.
the record label made Kiss change the order. It would have been an easy way to capture the crowd, but we said, you know what? Let's ease into it and tell the story the right way. And by doing that, if you listen to it, we don't stop until after Dark Light to take a little breather and introduce the band, and Todd says a little something. We do 5 or 6 songs, no breaks, back to back to back to back to back, bleeding into each other like the record. And that was a challenge.
That's interesting because that's actually taking me to the next question, which was basically, um, what was it like performing the entire album live? So you touched on this uh, 2 minutes ago, but how did it feel? Because one thing is all the prep, all the rehearsal and stuff. You guys learning the songs, the parts, but being together on stage, sounding, it's that was that atmosphere, you could feel it, you got on the mood. Were there any unexpected moments during the performance that you said, oh, we could have done this instead of that, or it felt great? So how was it?
So again, the two records were so different. Like Creatures, I was confident that we could capture it as long as we had the energy and the power, right? We could do it. The Elder, I think all 5 of us, until we ran it the first night. Now, the first night we ran it, if I remember correctly, we got together Thursday night and we had a little rehearsal spot. I had a little 4-piece drum set. We had a little crappy PA. We said, let's just touch base on everything once. We
Okay.
didn't have keys. Tyson wasn't there yet. We said, let's just see. We honestly, I swear to you guys, we didn't know if this was going to work. We didn't know if it was going to sound like the Elder. We all rehearsed our own parts and we rehearsed it with the record. And yeah, mine sounded fine because I'm playing it with the record. Jeremy probably sounded fine because he's playing with the record. Same thing with Todd and Zach and everybody. But until you get together and the instrumentation and the vocals all come together, and the vocals these guys are insane. The
Yeah.
vocal parts in these songs are insane. Under the Rose and even Mr. Blackwell, Jeremy, and Zach did all the verses together. Like, I don't know if they did an octave up from each other but the way they picked out their vocal parts and separated them, we didn't know if this was going to work. So when we got together that first night, and I think Brandon Fields might have posted a little clip because he was hanging out in rehearsal. We were in shock that it actually sounded pretty good. We were
Okay.
like, whoa, this kind of sounds like the Elder.
Mhm.
Holy shit. There were some hiccups, of course, little things here and there. I fucked up Escape from the Island, like the end of it, like the outro, and we couldn't figure out this part, and like the intro to Under the Rose, we couldn't get right, and there were some hiccups. But we knew after that first night, we're gonna be able to do this.
Okay.
So then by the
Okay.
time we did sound check the day of, and we got a chance to fix those little parts that we worked on the night before, we knew, okay, we got this.
We got this.
And by the time we did it live and we ran it like the record, I mean, listen, I don't know if anything is flawless, right? But it's pretty damn close.
And Joey, what was the crowd's reaction? How did the crowd respond to such a deep kind of something that never happened before, man? So playing the album, cover to cover. How was it?
It's funny. Like I said, there's such a different dynamic with the two records, right? Even the crowd, even the atmosphere, it's such a different vibe. So Neil is a smart fuck. He, we did Creatures. I think it was Friday night, ending the night. So the first night of Kiss Cancer Goodbye, the Creatures of the Night album ends the night. It's this bombastic energy and crazy lights and video wall, and the crowd is everyone standing and losing their minds and cheering, and crowd, hey, going crazy. The Elder is the exact opposite. Neil puts it on. We do it at 2:00 in the afternoon on Saturday afternoon. Everyone's hungover from the night before. We get to the venue. The reason why the video, if you guys watched it, like the Creatures video has like pro shot video.
Yeah.
The Elder, I had to piece together from fan footage. And the reason why, the video crew that Neil had professionally video everything, who was running the video wall, all the cameras, didn't show up, didn't come during the
Oh,
day. They only showed up at night. So we didn't have pro shot for the Elder. We were supposed to, but we didn't get a pro shot. That's why the audio is not as good as Creatures. The video is not as good as Creatures. It wasn't pro shot and pro mixed. We didn't have the soundboard, and we didn't have the pro cameras. So I had to piecemeal this together from all the fan footage. I edited the whole show.
Mhm.
So the subdued atmosphere of the Elder works because, like I said, you're starting with fanfare,
mhm.
going into Just a Boy and Odyssey. It's not a bombastic rock
Right.
concert.
Right.
It's like watching a play. It's like
Yeah.
watching theater.
Mhm.
So the audience, as much as I want everyone up and screaming, responded correctly.
Of
They were
course.
very subdued. They were almost mesmerized, like, wow, we're watching the Elder right now.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
wasn't until, the Oath, I think, where everyone started standing up and really, now this is a rock show.
Mhm.
And I think it worked that way because it built like they really wanted it to build. The album built with a crescendo, like a movie, like a musical would really do.
Yeah.
You're kind of easing into this story, and then all of a sudden, boom, the Oath hits, and you got Mr. Blackwell, and you got and Escape from the Island, and you finish on this big power note. So the audience it reacted perfectly.
For what it is, exactly. It's like a theater play, It's exactly, yeah.
Right.
I could imagine listening to the Elder hungover. Actually, it would enhance the experience.
Try playing it hungover.
Right. Now, Joe, you mentioned earlier that the Elder was Eric Carr's first album with Kiss. Now, do you think that his drumming on this album made its way to future records for Eric?
So Eric, that's a great question. Eric's style is very unique, just like Peter's is very unique. So different than Eric's, but they both have very unique drumming styles. Peter has a feel, and the people who say Peter's jazzy and big bandy, that's not true at all. Peter is a swing rock and roll drummer. But he has a vibe to him that only Peter has, much like Ringo only has. Eric has that as well, but in a different capacity. Eric's voicings and choices around the drum kit are so unique to his own that I am actually upset. I kind of touched on it before that I think later in those unmasked Kiss records, because the production was never there, you lose so much of Eric's amazing drumming because the production is gone.
Right.
Even as much as Asylum is one of my favorite records, but the drums on Asylum are non-existent.
Yeah.
King of the Mountain, you barely hear the double bass. You hear zero cymbals through the whole record.
Yeah.
Crazy Nights and Hot in the Shade, the drum sounds are, I'm going to say this, embarrassing. Eric's playing is so phenomenal on there. I do think his style, to answer your question, does translate through all those records. Eric's style never changes. But I do think capturing Eric's style was lost after Animalize.
So yourself as a drummer, then, how did you approach capturing the feel of the songs? Like, for example, The Oath and The Odyssey. How did you do it?
So again, not only the feel, but the drum sound was very important to me. So obviously, especially on Creatures. I spoke to, John Rochella, who was our drum tech that week. He's Ace's drum guy. So Scotty Coogan's good drum guy. I know John for about 20 years. John and I and Ken Trapp, whose drums we used, they're concert toms. It's this big bombastic, it looks like Eric's kit from The Elder and from Creatures, right? You saw the kit. We had to make sure we tried to capture those drums as best as we could. Now, I didn't want to capture the Elder drums. I wanted to recreate the Elder on stage with a mixture of Elder and Creatures drums. I didn't want them as bombastic as Creatures, because if you listen to the Creatures live recording that we did, the drums are bombastic. I talked to the sound guys. I said, "This is what we need. I need reverb on all the toms. I need this I need the echo. I need it to shoot through the room, especially the toms. The toms on Creatures are what make the album. So if you hear the live recording of Creatures, even stuff like, the beginning of Satan's Sin, bum bada bum bum bada bum da 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 da, it sounds like the Creatures record.
Yeah.
And that took a long time to reproduce. We worked on that a little while. With The Elder, I told the guys, I said, listen, we don't need it, and tuning had a lot to do with this too. We tweaked the drums to tune them a certain way. But with The Elder, I didn't want them as big as Creatures because I didn't want them to take away from the performance. Because I thought if they're too big, it almost is overpowering.
Yeah, you're taking over. Yeah, that's right.
So we dialed them down a little bit. I tweaked the tuning a tiny bit on them, muffled stuff a tiny bit so it wasn't as resonant. Told the sound guy, we don't need the bombastic toms as much. Still make them prominent, but we don't need them like as a lead instrument. So that's what I basically told them for Creatures. I need the toms as loud as the lead guitar. Whereas The Elder, we dialed it back a little bit. So recreating the sound was my first obstacle to try to recreate the feel. Creating the feel of the two records, that's, again, such a challenge because the feel is so different. And Eric plays so differently on them according to what the music dictates. So, tempos are very important to me.
Yeah.
Nothing was on click. We had no tracks. There was no backing tracks. I saw comments online like, oh, they remixed everything with backing tracks and overdubs. Nothing. There's no overdubs. There's no backing tracks. I didn't look at my ears. There's no in-ears in my ears. I have nothing in my ears. So there's no backing tracks, guys. It's impossible. But what I do always have is I have a metronome next to me. I have my tempos. Always, whenever I do a show, they're mapped out. So at the beginning of every song, you'll even see me click my metronome, reset the tempo, and make sure we're at least hovering right around the tempo within 3 or 4 clicks.
But your metronome, Joey, your metronome is just visual, or you don't have a click?
Right. So there's no audio.
That's
so
right.
Obviously, metronomes are sound. So what I use, it's an old school. I learned this. So I played with Trans-Siberian Orchestra for years. And it's an old school. I don't have it in front of me. It's actually in my drum case over here. It's a Tama metronome.
Okay.
And it's obviously you can hear it. You could use headphones in it, but it's lights.
It's lights. It's visual. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
lights are what I'm going by.
Right. Right.
I'm visually looking at the lights.
Good.
And I'm making sure.
Yeah.
I'm on beat.
Right. Right. Right.
At least to start. And then periodically, every so often, I'll look over to see where I am. If I'm slightly off, I'll bring it back, raise it up, see where I am, and I'll bring it back.
Right.
So that's how I try to capture. The tempo is the most important thing of my job, especially when I'm trying to recreate two iconic records.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to listen back to these records and go, God, Odyssey is so fast.
Yeah,
That's
that's
a
right.
ballad. Why is
Yeah.
that so fast? What
Yeah.
are we doing? So if you listen back, it's not perfect, but if you listen back, tempos are pretty on point.
Mhm.
And that's because, again, how strict I was with making sure that we're on the metronome, we're on the click, and making sure that I'm capturing the feel of these songs as best as I could.
Joey, it's amazing having this kind of discussion because those two albums, they're so different. And we talked about drumming styles and the technical stuff, like the sound and the mixing and the tuning. But you, as a drummer, how did you adjust your mindset? How did you adjust your energy yourself to play so differently on those two albums?
Well, it's funny because like physically, again, because Creatures was so physically demanding.
Yeah.
And the way Neil set it up, it actually worked out perfectly just for my body and my mindset, because Creatures ended the night on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
It was physically high energy, octane. We exhausted. I mean, we left every bit of energy on that stage. I was dripping, soaking wet at the end of that show. Right from that show, we go to the after party. I'm hosting the after party. I'm emceeing. I'm buying drinks for everyone. We're all drinking. And then we have the Elder the next afternoon. My sound check is like 10 a.m., whatever it is. So I'm shocked. I'm physically hurting. My hands hurt from doing Creatures. My mind hurts from drinking all night. I barely slept. So it actually worked perfectly because
That's
I was
right.
more subdued.
Yeah,
For the
exactly.
Elder,
That's
I
perfect.
physically was more subdued because it was a long day the night before, and the day before we rehearsed for hours and practiced, and I did a live too, and we did all these other things that day, so many other performances, that it was great because I was tired. By the time we did the Elder, I was physically and mentally exhausted. So
Right.
easing into that set was a natural
It
thing.
was good.
I wasn't overpowering the Just a Boy or Odyssey, because I was physically and mentally
You couldn't.
exhausted at that point.
That's right.
So it was a good way to adjust naturally.
Yeah. So, Joey, over the years, the Elder has gained like a cult following. So after playing it live, and on last count, just on YouTube alone, it had 30,000 views. Now, do you believe that fans will take this album or see this album in a different light after seeing this particular performance?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you read, I think there's almost 400 comments on just the YouTube alone. Again, the Elder, we didn't do the social media campaign that we did for Creatures. Creatures, we started one song at a time and methodically released this. The Elder doesn't work that way. We can't release Just a Boy and then wait a week and release Odyssey. It doesn't work. The Elder had to be done as a full show. So, releasing it as a full show, we have less views on the Elder, but I don't think it has anything to do with the popularity, because it has less views, but it has almost triple the comments.
Mm-hmm.
And all the comments on the Elder video on YouTube, especially, are mostly, wow. I've never thought we'd ever see this album live. And the other things that I love the most are when people say, wow, this made me hear this record in a whole new light. I never liked this record, but seeing it live and hearing these songs as a 5-piece band and just hearing it as a rock concert rather than this concept album with this weird brown cover in a hand, it makes me re-examine and love this record. I'm a fan now. And those are the comments that I love the most, where I hear people say, never liked this record, but I'm a big fan now.
And Kiss Army, we're not done talking the Elder, because as promised, we have a special announcement from Joey. And before we hear the details from Joey himself, here is a promo to get you excited.
In a time before time, when the elders shaped the stars and the avatars walked the earth, a prophecy was set in motion. A boy bound by destiny. A darkness rising from the depths. And a battle that will decide the fate of all creation. He never wanted to be a hero. He never asked for power. But when the creatures of the night come for him, when the stars whisper his name, he will have no choice but to stand and fight, guided by the avatars, hunted by the dark light, tested in fire and shadow. The time has come for Kalion to awaken. Inspired by the legendary album, Music from the Elder, a fantasy novel unlike any other. Available on hardcover and audiobook, only on Amazon. Coming soon.
All right, Joey. So we can speak for the Kiss Army when we say, oh man, we're so excited about this project, my friends. So the floor is yours. Tell us everything, please.
So one, I hope everyone enjoyed what we just saw. We just saw the brief promo trailer for my new book inspired by Music from the Elder. Now, we all know Music from the Elder was this concept record with this very tiny story on the inside cover that Gene kind of wrote that was, God, what was it, a paragraph?
Yeah.
But, the songs tell this story about this boy on this quest. And, it's the typical fantasy story.
Mhm.
It's Luke Skywalker. It's Frodo from The Hobbit. It's the same old prophecy story. Boy chosen to save the world and battle the Dark One, right? We all know the story, right? It's been written throughout the ages. But nobody knew the real Elder story because it was never fleshed out. So what I said to myself, I said, obviously, I don't want to have any copyright infringement. I don't want to steal all this stuff from the Elder. So what I did, I'm a big fantasy novel reader. I'm a big fan of, obviously, Lord of the Rings when I grew up, but things like David Eddings and Terry Goodkind and Robert Jordan, all these big time fantasy authors. I've read hundreds of these books over the years. I'm just a big fantasy reader. I'm a big Dungeons and Dragons guy and Magic the Gathering, card game I play. So I'm a big fantasy, Conan the Barbarian, Dragon Slayer, and Clash of the Titans, all these movies from the early 80s, I grew up on, and I love this fantasy genre. So I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take the concept of the Elder and use that inspiration and start writing what I think the Elder could have been if it was a movie. And I started this right around the same time as I started learning the album for the performance. I started this back in October because I really, as much as I loved the Elder as a kid, it was the first record I ever bought with my own money. I bought the cassette, Sam Goody, in Kings Plaza Mall in Brooklyn. I bought the Elder in 1981. It's the first record I ever bought. As much as I always loved it growing up, I never dove into it like we had to dive into it to learn to play it live. And as I dove into it, I've gotten such a even bigger appreciation for this record that I got such crazy inspiration to start writing. Again, as you all may know or you don't know, I've also written a couple books. I've written my autobiography, came out a couple years ago, was a #1 bestseller on Amazon. I wrote a couple fantasy wrestling books of me becoming a wrestler called Wrestling with Joey Licious. I wrote Raise Your Glasses with Tom and Zeus from Shout It Out Loud cast. So I have, a plethora of books already released. I said, you know what? Something that I think I could do. Just started writing the basic concept one night. And all of a sudden, it just started flowing out of my body. You know, when songwriters say, God, I have songwriter's block, and then all of a sudden I'll write 30 songs one day. That's how this book happened.
Okay.
I started jotting down a couple ideas, and all of a sudden, again, keeping in mind with the record, like the record still guided me. Like I had the track listing. That's what guided me. I knew where I wanted to start. I knew the points I wanted to hit. I wanted to hit the boy starting his quest, starting the Odyssey. I wanted to introduce this evil character. I wanted to, have this, the name of the book is called The Order of the Rose. And obviously we know that comes from the Elder. And it's, it's based around the Elder, who are these ancient beings who are running this world. And I even incorporated what Kiss is now calling the avatars. So in my book, the Kiss characters, again, they're not Gene, Paul, Peter, and Ace, but we'll call them the Kiss characters if you want. They're the avatars in my book. And they have these powers. They were created by the Elder. And it tells the story of the Elder, as you saw in the trailer. And it goes through how they're battling this evil dark light and the malevolent order. And it's how this boy tries to fulfill the prophecy given to him. And it's funny, just today, I got the first proof.
Oh, wow.
It's a hardcover. This is the cover. This is the first time I'm ever showing this cover anywhere.
That's beautiful.
Super nice.
So as you can see, the boy, we got the avatars, we got the darkness up here, we got some creatures of the night up here.
Yeah.
So, it's heavily inspired by the Elder, but, I think people who don't know the Elder story can appreciate it just for a good fantasy read.
Yeah.
But if you know the Elder, if you read this along with the record, and this will also be on audiobook when it's released. I'm hoping to have this out in a couple weeks, mid-April at the very latest. This will be released on hardcover and audiobooks on Amazon exclusively. So if you're not a big reader, and I know a lot of the Kiss fans, God, this is a 300-page book. They're never going to dive into this book. Grab it on audio. I got the guys from Ancient Door. I don't know if you guys know that.
Absolutely.
Ancient Door is
yes.
the Elder tribute record.
Yeah.
They've agreed to contribute some of the songs that they did. I'm using them as background music inside the audiobook right now. So as you're listening to the audiobook, you're hearing some of the tracks in the background, and you're feeling what the Elder could have been if it was this big bombastic movie.
Absolutely.
Wow.
It's a full journey, man. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Now
Wow.
that's
It's
a
a journey,
bundle
all
I'm
right.
going to buy. That's a bundle I'm going to buy. The
Oh,
book
yes.
and the audio.
Oh,
That's
yes. Oh,
awesome,
yeah.
man. Can't wait.
Absolutely.
And it'll definitely be very affordable too. So I don't have my price points yet, but they'll definitely be under $30. You could grab the hardcover definitely for under $30. The audiobook will probably be right around the same price. I really think if you like the Elder, and even if you don't like Kiss at all, if you're just a fantasy reader, it's a really great read of a boy fulfilling the prophecy set in stone, eons ago by the Elder. And if you ever loved the Elder and you wanted to know what this could have been fleshed out, this is for you.
Joey, how do you know already how you're going to distribute it? So how can people get access to it?
Yep. So it's going to be exclusively on Amazon. All my books are on Amazon.
Okay.
It will be on Amazon throughout the world, not just US. You'll be able to get it on Amazon. I'm hoping, like I said, April 15th. I don't have the official release date yet because, like I said, I just got the first proof. The audiobook is in its final stages. I'm actually up to There's 46 chapters. 44 is being completed today by my voiceover
Wow.
actor. So 44 is being done today. We'll have the audiobook ready in the next few days. Then I send it to the publisher. They got to approve everything for sure. And then it usually takes 10 days after that. So I am looking at around roughly April 15th release. It's going to be exclusive to Amazon. Again, price point, super affordable, under $30, hardcover book,
Love it.
Beautiful.
great stuff inside, cool artwork, telling the story, inspired by music from the Elder.
Beautiful stuff.
My God, man, March is an amazing month to be a Kiss fan. Oh my God, one thing after another to get excited about. Joey, this is fantastic, man. This is fantastic. So, Joey, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show, not just for this episode, but for 2 episodes, man. It is so, so appreciated. Thank you. And congratulations on the Creatures performance, The Elder, and of course, your new book, The Order of the Rose.
Guys, again, thank you so much. I'm a Kiss fan, just like you guys, like we all are. I try to create things, Kiss always, what's Gene and Paul always say? We wanted to
Yeah.
create the band
Yeah.
that we never got to see live, right?
Right.
All I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do things, events, performances, stories, books, recordings that we never got,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I would want to see as a fan. God, I wanted to read this book all my life.
Yeah.
And now, weirdly, I wrote it, but I still want to read it. I want to read
course.
this so I can relive the Elder in the way that I always thought it could be. Watching, the Creatures performance back and the Elder performance back, even if I wasn't in it, I love watching that people have
Yeah.
those 2 performances now that they can watch back and say, God, we never got this, but you know what? Check mark, I have it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a good way to wrap up, Joey, this beautiful discussion with you, is to say that lately there has been a lot of controversy over Kiss merch. So I hope fans they see these 2 performances and say, who cares about the merch? Because these performances are proof that it's really all about the music now. And it's nice to see that after the end of the road, we fans still get the experience from Kiss surprises like the ones that you did. But what makes it even greater is that it comes from passionate, Kiss fans like you. So all this to say, Joey, on behalf of the Kiss Army, thank you so much, my friend. Thank you.
Oh, thank you guys so much. Again, Kiss, it's not about, listen, the controversy is always there, right? We're Kiss
Yeah.
fans. We're going to bitch and complain about everything that happens. But at the end of the day, how thankful do we all have to be? 50 years later, I saw Kiss 1979, Madison Square Garden. I would have never dreamed 45 years later, we're still getting new Kiss stuff,
Yeah.
right? Off the Soundboard is coming out tomorrow. We're recording this, right? We got new events. Vegas was just announced. We got new events. We got all this cool stuff happening. We got fans like me
Yeah.
doing Creatures, doing the Elder, writing the Elder book, creating. Chris Jericho is doing a 80s unmasked Kiss tribute band. He just released Turn on the Night, a new single, to rock radio. It's going to chart on rock radio. Who would have ever thought 50 years later all this stuff would be happening? So as much as we all bitch and complain, because we all do, we also have to just breathe a second and be thankful. We're all still doing this. We're still experiencing new Kiss events, new Kiss product that we're all excited for. So please, everyone that's bitching and complaining, breathe a second and then realize what we can be thankful for.
Yeah. And celebrate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Something that Mark Giacchini said on Three Side is like, you know what? You could complain; it's not a problem, but be respectful. You complain in a concrete manner. Have something to say, and we're seeing it now. Pop House is listening. And if fans, like you said, stop and breathe and be concrete. we're going to get what we want. And it's already starting that way. We're seeing that now. It's a fantastic time to be a Kiss fan right now. Like you said, 50 years later.
I couldn't agree more. Pop House, I think, obviously was slow coming out of the gate. It's been a year, but especially the things like the merch without Eric and Bruce on it, them correcting that and taking it off the market. They're listening. Nobody complains more than me. I sent a crazy tweet after the last Kiss show. I was at Madison Square Garden. I was extremely disappointed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about the performance. Kiss sounded incredible that night. They sounded great. I just thought in my brain they were going to be more about a 50-year celebration and thanking Bruce and Eric and Mark and Vinny and Peter and Ace and celebrating for Doc and Bill Coyne and Neil Bogart and all these people that got them where they were. When I didn't get any of that, it was disappointing to me because I thought that's what we were going to get.
Mhm.
But maybe now we're going to get all that stuff.
Yeah,
So nobody complains more than me.
Who knows? Yeah.
But I think the people who complain respectfully, like you said, like I do,
Right.
are the people who are the most passionate because
Yeah.
I'm going to complain when I don't like something, but nobody loves Kiss more than me. God.
Yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
Yeah, we
Mhm.
take it to heart, man. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we have passion, for sure. For sure. So, Joey, once again, thank you so much for being on the show. Again. Thank you. Kiss Army, we know you saw the Elder performance. Let us know what you thought of the show in the comment section. In the meantime, please like and subscribe and support the amazing guests we have on the Kiss Army Nation podcast. Talk soon. Goodbye, Kiss Army.